Well, hello there, fam. Welcome, welcome, welcome to You Plant, We Water. I am your host, Dr. Toya Flowers, licensed professional counselor with a doctoral degree in counseling, and I am also a professor teaching, you guessed it, counseling. Um, and I have a specialization in working with couples and families in particular, which lends itself to this show. Here on this corner of the world, we are focused on talking to you about topics related to relationship satisfaction, mental health, and combining our faith and spirituality so that you can have the happy, healthy, thriving relationships that God truly wants you to have. So, welcome back. Today, as you can see, I'm flying solo, and it's kind of appropriate for the topic that I have for you on today. And that topic, without further ado, has to do with fasting, right? And you're probably thinking, well, what does being on your own have to do with fasting? Because I'm going to be talking today about fasting as a time of consecration and how sometimes there's even some separating or some isolation that may have to happen so that you can truly focus on connecting with God, right? With the Most High and hearing from Him and bringing yourself into full alignment. So, having said that, I am going to jump right in and share a little bit about what's been going on with me personally and what led me to this topic. So, as you know, if you've been watching us for a while, we've talked about a plethora of topics. And as the year was winding out, we talked a lot about spiritual warfare, prayer. We talked about closing out chapters as the year came to an end. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen or heard elsewhere. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me because God was speaking to me. But everywhere I've looked, everyone I've talked to has been doing some type of fast, especially starting at the beginning of the year. There have been whole church community fasts that have been happening where people are refraining from eating for 1 or 2 hours for the day. There are several churches I know that have been engaging in the Daniel fast, things of that nature. And then I've just been talking to individuals who've been on their own course. Now, for me personally, right? Excuse me. So I had been praying and seeking God, just, wanting to start the new year out right, wanting God to use me in whatever way He had fit for me in this upcoming year of 2026. And God put it on my heart to engage in the Esther fast, right? What is the Esther fast? The Esther fast is a 3-day fast where, for the entirety of the 3 days, you refrain from food and drinks. You only have water, right? And some people do it without water. But I did that a couple weeks ago, and I just want to tell you, man, God is so good. It was the testimonies are already coming in my own personal life, even though, there's so much more to explore. But I feel like if you're watching this, maybe God is calling you to a season of consecration. Maybe there's something that's been on your heart that you're thinking about why you may want to fast. And so I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. I'll tell you this. At the start of my own fast, I was watching YouTube. I love YouTube. That's probably my number one social media is YouTube. and it came across my thread. I think that's what they call it, right? But it was testimonials from people who had just come off of the 3-day Esther fast. And what was amazing is, regardless of what they were sharing, I could just see like a glow almost on all of these people. And what it was TikTok threads that were stitched together. People were just kind of talking about their experience. And so I was like, oh, that's beautiful. It's not necessarily what led me to doing it as well, but I just knew that God had been speaking to me. We know in the word it says some of these things only come breakthrough with fasting and prayer. And so that's kind of what led me to doing the fast myself. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Esther fast, right? Why is it called the Esther fast? Let's just refresh. I brought my actual physical Bible, but I'm just going to recap for you, right? So we remember the story of Esther. She was a queen, right? A Jewish queen, and her identity had been hidden for some time until the Jewish people were going to be murdered in mass, right? And so at that time, her uncle who raised her, who was more like a father, asked her to go before the king for the people. Now that sounds like, oh, okay, just go before the king. But this was a big deal because trying to go before the king without him having called for you could have resulted in death. And so Esther told her uncle, like, hey, that might result in my death. And he kind of says, who knows, maybe you have been called to royalty for such a time as this. And so she says she will do it. She will risk her life to save the Jewish people, but she asked that everyone fast for 3 days and 3 nights. They fast for 3 days and 3 nights. And what's beautiful about fasting, and I'm going to talk more about different segments of fasting in a second, but it wasn't like at the end of the 3 days, boom, God just saved the Jews, right? No, faith without works is dead. It wasn't just like all their prayers were answered after they stopped eating for food. What happened is it gave her alignment and discernment, and it helped her to order her steps as far as what would be the plan moving forward. After the 3-day fast, she did ask to see the king. He agreed. She didn't just go in and say, hey, I'm Jewish, free the Jews. No, she planned a dinner and all these things. So she was able to walk in obedience with God and to come up with a plan that ultimately not only led to the Jews not being massacred, basically, but the enemy that they had against him ended up falling into his own pit, right? Like what he was plotting for their demise ended up being his own demise. And so that is where the idea of the Esther fast comes from. Couple of things about fasting, right? It really has to be about you seeking to come closer and draw nearer to the Most High God, right? It's not about, hey, I'm going to fast because I wanted to lose some weight anyway. It's not that, right? It's not even, as we know in the Bible, it says you don't want to go about doing it for show, right? During my time of fasting, I didn't tell anyone that I was fasting because it's between me and God, right? It's not something that, you're doing, because if you look for your reward with men, you won't get your reward in secret from your Father. So it's about consecration. And it's also not, as you all have heard me say, it's not a genie in a bottle. We don't fast because, God, I really want this job, so I'm just going to fast. Yes, you can fast and seek God, and it does say, ask and you shall receive, but it really has to be about, a fast is really, it's a sacrifice, right? You're crucifying your flesh to come into obedience with God. Now, there are lots of things you could do during the fast aside from just not eating. And I am going to touch on, what do I have? Four or five different types of fast that can go in concurrence with this. We have emotional fasting, right? So you can fast from complaining, over-explaining, rescuing adults, emotional dumping on people without consent. So during your time of fast, you can really think about how do you show up emotionally and try to pull back from some of that. And this fast is going to reveal your regulation. How much of your emotional regulation do you outsource to other people? Relational fast. So this is about the relationships you're involved in. You can fast from chasing unavailable people, from romanticizing potential, from reopening closed doors. A mental fast, right? So here we're thinking about our mind, fasting from negative self talk, fasting from rumination. Rumination is when there is something that we are almost obsessively thinking about. Ruminating means it's just constantly on your mind. You can't break free from it, but you can fast from that, from doom scrolling, or from rehearsing conversations that have never happened. And then a digital fast, fasting from social media, news cycles, constant input and information from everywhere, maybe secular music, shows, things of that nature. The more you can try to set yourself apart, I say the better, right? The quieter it'll be, the more that you can focus on hearing from God. And then a fifth type of fast, in addition, again, these are all things that happen in addition to not eating food or drinking juice, pops, whatever. A spiritual fast. And that might sound like, isn't this all spiritual? But what we're talking about is fasting from religious performance, from people pleasing in church, fasting from comparison disguised as discernment, or fasting from a sense of spiritual superiority, right? So you can pull back from all of these things. Let's see, where do I want to go with this next? I'm trying to share. Do I want to say, for me personally, during my 3-day fast, I refrained from secular music, from social media content. I didn't watch shows, only watched television or movies that were biblical or Christian based, because I just wanted to be mindful of the food that I was getting from everywhere, right? Because food isn't just what we physically eat off a plate. And it was beautiful. I remembered seeing, while I was seeing other people's testimonies right before my fast, and there was a gentleman who said, remember, man doesn't live by bread alone, right? And I remembered that scripture during my fast. And if I can be honest with you all, I have done other fasts. I've done the Daniel fast before. I fasted for, a couple hours per day, but I had never gone without eating for several days. And the truth is, this is the honest to God truth, I was not hungry. I was in my word. Someone had advised me, if you feel like you would want to eat, if you feel tempted to eat, get in your word. Every time I went to the word, I was fulfilled. But I honestly was never truly hungry. What I did discover is that I sometimes eat out of boredom. Like when I was sitting through meetings and things like that, I was like, I just want to munch on chips or something like that. But as far as feeling, deprived or I didn't have any of that. And what was unique for me is I've also done things like a 10-day smoothie cleanse. And I used to do this maybe once or twice a year because it's like a detox, right? So you're only having fruits, vegetables, and it's really great. It's good for your health and things like that. But the difference between that cleanse and this fast is when I do that 10-day cleanse, I usually have symptoms. I usually feel really tired, or I get headaches from the withdrawal from sugar or caffeine. And I can feel like I'll have a couple of days where I'm just not feeling good because, again, I'm detoxing. That wasn't the case with the fast. It was beautiful. It was a wonderful time of God. I didn't go out much. I wasn't socializing much. I just kind of kept to myself, focused on the word and worship as well. I sang, I danced, I prayed, I cried. I did all of the things. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience, right? And for me personally, I was doing it because I know I'm in a season of consecration and I needed clarity and focus. It was very difficult. I had so many distractions, and I still do, that my time, my energy was being split and pulled into so many directions that I wasn't quite sure where was it I should be putting my effort, right? What was it that God had for me? And I'll tell you all the final result of some of this. And it's only been a couple weeks since I fasted. And so there's so much more that God is going to reveal. Um, but man, it was great. It was just like what everyone had shared. And man, I can't, I can't put it into words how truly grateful I am for the time that I had of fasting. And it's something that I will definitely do moving forward. All right. So having said that, right? Um, when we connect this into our mental health, right? So this is definitely a faith-based practice, but what does it have to do with our mental health? Well, what we know is when we slow down and eliminate distractions, we give the brain time to process, and we give our entire nervous system, as we talked about. I think it was maybe a couple weeks ago we talked about regulation, right? Allowing our nervous system to regulate. When we are under a lot of stress, pressure, anxiety, worry, experiencing trauma, our nervous system is in a flux, right? And ultimately, what happens is that your nervous system kicks into almost like an emergency mode. It's an override, and you go into your fight, flight, or freeze responses. In order to get into your fight, flight, or freeze, your brain has to produce stress chemicals and hormones such as cortisol. If you've ever heard of cortisol, it's very bad for you. It can even actually cause you to gain weight, have that stressed belly, all of those things. But it's very, very harmful. It has a very deleterious, right? There's my Professor $10 word, a deleterious effect on your physical and mental health. Um, but that's what happens when our nervous system is in overload. We are in our fight, flight, or freeze. And ultimately, why does this happen? So I've shown you the model of the brain before, right? And here, this is our amygdala. Was formed first. This is one of the first parts of the brain that is formed. And this is our emotional regulation center. And this is where the fight, flight, or freeze happens. And as you develop in your mom, the brain continues to develop, and the cortex, this is the prefrontal cortex and all of that, that comes, and this is your brainstem. And as you can see, it goes right over that amygdala, which is the most primitive or oldest part of your brain. Well, it's here, right? The frontal cortex, this is where our logic and reasoning and thinking and decision making and all of those things can take place. But when we're under stress or feeling trauma or our nervous system is dysregulated, we tend to flip our lid, meaning that this logic and reasoning goes offline, and we operate solely from the amygdala, which is the emotional center where the fight, flight, or freeze happens. And that was necessary, right? If you think back to when we were living in the wilderness and things like that, if a big giant bear is coming at you, you don't want to then use your logic brain and think, I could go east, I could go west. What do I want to do? You want your mind to just kick into survival mode, and that's what it does. Automatically, it'll happen, just like you don't have to think about the next breath you're going to take. Your mind will kick in, and it's going to tell you, freeze, there's a bear coming, or run, there's a bear coming, or fight, there's a bear coming. But it's not logic based, which is great, except when it comes to interacting with our loved ones or people, because we're not living with bears now, and a lot of what we have to do requires a mental load, even just our jobs, even just responding to an email, even just being on social media. So we got to bring that prefrontal cortex, bring it back down, put that lid back down so that we can function. Well, that is what fasting can give you, right? The shutting down all of the distractions, all of the noise, and focusing solely on God, your Heavenly Father, gives that lid a chance to close. It gives that nervous system a time to relax and shut down some of those stress hormones where you're not, if you think about fight for feast, it's almost like you're always on edge, and you can just relax. And when you can relax, you can come into alignment, and you can better hear the voice of God and what it is that He has for you next. I'm trying to think, what else do I want to share that you can get a lot of this from your pastors, your spiritual mentors, and things like that. I just hope that if you're seeing this, maybe that is God telling you that he wants you to draw closer to him, and maybe you will consider a fast of some sort. It doesn't have to be the Esther fast. It can be whatever it is that you feel God put on your heart. Now, here's what's great about my fast, and what God has done, and what is being birthed from my time with him. I am going to be hosting the first ever HER Women's Conference, right? And HER stands for Healing, Exhortation, and Restoration. This is going to be a small conference. It's completely free of charge. It's going to be taking place at a church, and I'm inviting women to come out. And again, we're going to be combining our faith, mental health, and spirituality for healing, exhortation, and restoration. What's beautiful is before the fast, God had put it in my spirit, and I was kind of like, I don't know, God, why me? I don't think I can do it. All of the things. And after, I knew I have to do this. This is my first fruits as far as the things that I want to do moving forward. As I've been talking to you all, there's retreats and things like that coming up. But this conference is the first fruits. And what is beautiful is I'm still the same person. Y'all, if you knew me, I am an ideas person. I'm high energy. I love to do the things. I hate planning and administration. That's not my gifting. And so there's where my hesitation came. Like, a conference, there's so much planning and administration with that. When I tell you God is moving, I've had several churches volunteer their spaces. I've just briefly mentioned it to other professionals. They are on board and willing to do it. So this conference is going to be great. It's our first one, and this year's theme is Take Me to the King, right? And we're going to have, again, professionals. There'll be other doctors, lawyers, things of that nature there. Who'll be delivering sermonettes. We'll have some breakout sessions where we can get some insights. We're going to have prayer, altar prayer, and we're going to worship, right? And we're going to be iron sharpening iron. So I can't wait to share more information with you about that. That's going to be happening the last Saturday in March. So keep your eye out. You can always visit our Facebook page at You Plant, We Water, where there will be flyers and things of that nature. So you can find out more information about how to get involved. You'll also be able to register via Eventbrite. But I'm just excited, right, about what God is going to do, not only for myself, but for all of us in 2026. So again, stay posted for information and details about the conference. Again, it's the HER conference, and this year's theme is Take Me to the King. All right. Okay. So that's it. Here I am. Next week, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a special guest, and we're going to be talking about, little teaser, fatherhood, the presence and power of God, and what we learn, right, through fatherhood. So I hope you will stay tuned and be sure to join me for that. I'm trying to think what other things I want you to know. There will be, again, information regarding retreats. So we have the conference, and then there will soon be retreats that follow. Other things I'd love for you all to, just be mindful of. If you're interested in either being a sponsor of the show, if you have a topic that you would like us to cover, or maybe you want to be a guest on the show. If that is the case, please, again, visit the Facebook page, You Plant, We Water, where you can direct message me and we can get that process going. I'll be praying for you. I hope you all will be praying for me. And as always, remember, you plant, we water.
Go to your Apple or Google Play Store and download the WVTC Gospel Radio app today. You can also say, Alexa, play WVTC Radio Skills.
Would you like to play WVTC Radio Network?
Absolutely. Download it today.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communication Station.